much to organizers for inviting me, and I will very nicely follow the speakers before me because as Jirka has already announced, I worked also with IBM, and I was hired by Fred Jelinek, who was initially mentioned, and I know Jim Baker, and I know all the history about Dragon, but don't worry. I won't talk about speaker recognition. I will focus on something which is these days called intelligent personal assistants, and it is a topic which I believe resonates today in the IT or in the community you are sort of representing. So I skip the agenda. You will see what I'll be talking about during my presentation. So first of all, we already have several intelligent personal assistants. Actually, I have chosen the name because this is how these agents are called in Wikipedia. But if you really look on the web, you will find more than 100 different acronyms or synonyms or whatever we would call it for this kind of agents which are helping us. So I would mention the most well-known, which is Apple Siri, Google Now, Microsoft Cortana, and recently or for another 2 years, Amazon Echo, which is actually an appliance. The first three are running on cell phones or on smartphones, and smartphones are typically the most used hardware or appliance where we use these APIs. But of course, it's not only this, because there are many appliances running on the web or applications or robots or whatever. So I will, in this presentation, discuss use cases and then architecture, and I will also mention what we do at the local university, and discuss few details about the architecture. So first of all, what is the basic definition? The basic definition is that the intelligent personal assistants, I will use just the word assistant, are applications or appliances which try to help people to solve their needs, to serve during their everyday life, to answer questions, and ultimately autonomously work on their behalf, which is probably some kind of robots or some kind of appliances. You can imagine, for example, a coffee maker, and you get to your kitchen and the coffee maker is equipped with a camera, so it recognizes who is approaching the coffee maker and says something. Hi Joe, do you want the coffee the same way as yesterday? And you say yes or no or something, and then the magic will happen. And I think that's the future, but it's not that distant future, because there are these days in work already devices which put together cameras, Wi-Fi, and microphones, and they have a size of a cube of an edge of 1 millimeter, and these things do not need too much energy, and they will be probably in many things we have in our house, in cars, and everywhere. To achieve this goal, IPA needs to communicate and needs to be connected to some source of information, which is obviously today cloud. IPA segments. So we meet, I have mentioned just the most important three types, but we can meet with assistants in cars. Specifically, cars are very much behind, because typically when you buy a car which is equipped with speech recognition, you get a user's manual, and there are like 2-3 pages of commands which you need to memorize, and if you don't memorize them, the car would not do anything. So if you say, open the window next to the driver, the machine may understand, but if you say just open the left window, the machine won't understand. So that's really a user interface which is very difficult and mostly doesn't work. Then we have wearables, you know, the Apple Watch, and you can talk to it, you can do calendaring and many different things. Then we have chatbots, you probably know the story, I probably shouldn't mention, you know everybody what I mean. Then home automation, obviously lots of devices in our house, robots, appliances, etc. Oops, what happened? Okay. So IPA functionality. The basic functionality we know from our cell phones is the alerting and reminding. Phones keep telling us 10 minutes before the meeting, wake up, go there. The second thing which is already used in many of these devices is something what we call command control. This is typically what's happening in the car, where you can direct the car to do something, or some of the parts of the car to set it up, etc. The next thing in the hierarchy or in the difficulty is a front end for information retrieval engine. The best example is Google Now, where today you can in many languages, and you can also mix the languages, so you can query the search and it responds mostly correctly. If you are not in a railway station when there is coming a train, obviously the noise is so high that even a person standing next to you won't understand. Then simple factoid question is a next step. Factoid questions are like what's the population of Brazil, and this is something what the engines are capable of today, and do provide reasonable answers. Then, as I said already, chatbots, avatars, etc. And then the more and more ambitious projects like robo-advisors. There are typically the word robo-advisors is used in the field of stock market, and there are more than 5, I think like 7 or almost 10 applications where you can ask the robot, or you have to pay for it, but if you pay for it, the robots will give you an advice of what stock to buy. Unfortunately, if you bought all of them and try to ask the same question, each of them gives a different answer. And maybe, I don't know if it's the sign of uncertainty on the stock market or inability of the robots, but that's the kind, or that's the thing. And the last I put on the list is suggesting or qualified decision making, etc. Certainly, we can imagine that in the nearest future, some of these intelligent assistants will be a member of board of directors in companies such as Microsoft and others, because this member will know much more than any other member. But obviously, unless the previous speaker solves the world or conquer the world, this robot probably won't have the associative thinking or the capability to put these things together, won't have intuition and other qualities which are typical for leaders of these big companies. Next thing, how do we communicate? I think that it has been touched by both of the previous speakers, and I just prepare a small window into the history. In the previous time, people have met, they shook hands, and they made a deal. And obviously, they communicate. Then call centers appeared, and the language stays there or is there. the same way as when we meet together, but we do the business remotely because of credit cards and shipping companies. Then the next step, where internet businesses, and we know Amazon or the other, where you do the order and you do it again using language, not necessarily voice, but you type or you click what you want, then you pull out the credit card and pay, and the thing is delivered. The next step, which is the latest, 10 minutes only, okay. The next step is are the new agents like WeChat, which is in China, very similar to sending SMS messages, agents on Facebook like the AIM agent, or Alexa, where you can say on Alexa, I put there an example which is recently mentioned in many articles on the web, Alexa call Uber, which is a fantastic thing because the system knows all your details and you just accomplish the task much quicker than you can do it on the cell phone. Okay, so language is the thing we should focus at. And what are the interaction channels? So I put together here as input text, speech, but also of course gestures and of course because you can take the cell phone, put the camera on certain object and say, tell me what it is. It connects to whatever is the database of images or classifies it using the ImageNet, etc., etc. Output, again, text, voice. And for that we need microphones, cameras, etc. But what is for the future and what is for our research or our work in this area, very important that I think that the future devices and cell phones and so on will combine all these different channels, and this kind of UI are typically called multimodal. What are the interaction models? The interaction models or the interaction can be initiated by the intelligent assistant. This is like the alerting or suggesting. It can be initiated by the user. This is the command or the question you ask, and you enter typically today into directed dialogue, which is a dialogue for filling a form. So the system, and this is happening in telephony mainly, is asking you questions. You are answering questions, completing forms, and then some action which might be a database query is executed. The newer systems, and we can could put into this category also those Siri, Google Now, etc., are using open dialogue approach, where the system basically says, what can I do for you? And then you choose the question, be it command or be it question. Sadly, there are other categorizations like mixed initiative, where the one who is leading the dialogue or the entities leading the dialogue are changing. So sometimes the engine is doing disambiguation, and sometimes you are asking the engine. Disambiguation is a task when you ask the agent, I'd like to fly to New York tomorrow. And you didn't say which air agency or to which airport or first class, second class, what time, etc. So today in a voice center there is a lady which is doing the intelligent interface to a screen where there are all these lines, and this lady is asking you and filling in the things. There are already many systems trying to automate this and do it without agents, because agents are making mistakes and sometimes do not work as precisely as engine or as machines can do. But still, it's not 100% perfect, or it does not work always. So there is, and people are always seeking to get to human beings. So these are interfaces which we call conversational, and there is topic changing. I'll skip that so as not to go 5 minutes. Okay. User models. So what is very important to make these applications smart is to create or to use context, which is location, time, history, which is what we have been clicking before, future, our calendar. The machine knows what is our next meeting, tells us where is the best, what is the best way to get to the location. Then user profile. So if you go to Google or to any site today, they ask you immediately to fill in the profile so as they can use it. Then I would mention, or has been already mentioned before, the affective, not effective, affective computing. User model context is also of the external type, which is an input from sensors. I think that in a few years in this room will be plenty of sensors, and everybody who enters the room will be capable from their cell phones to do certain tasks, at least to, for example, to read what is the temperature, what is the humidity, and some of the chosen ones may turn on the light or turn off the projector. Then private information, which we do not have access to, and this is what the cell phone operators are all the time collecting on their servers. These are our credit card transactions, our utilities bills, and so on. And this is leading us to a very important issue, and it is privacy, because if you are in a hotel and you'd like to have a coffee, you get to a concierge and you say, okay, I feel like to have a nice cup of coffee, where is the best coffee shop nearby? And this way you are already sharing some part of your privacy or some part of your private thoughts with that person. And we have to ask ourselves how much of this information we can share or we wish to share with our assistants, and to get to the final, or there is no final, everything is evolving, but to make assistants which are very useful, we have to create a kind of super trust relationship with these devices, because to accomplish what I before said, like call Uber, the Echo from Amazon must know where it is located and has to know other details which are required to call the taxi to your house. So that's a very important issue which we have to have always in mind doing or designing assistants. So the intelligent personal assistants are, and here I am coming to the topic of this conference, one of the best examples where many different kinds of machine learning and artificial intelligence are required. Here is a list. I won't read it. Most of you probably know, and it's NLU and lots of other things. I'd like to point out the two basic architectures. We have seen in the Microsoft presentation already a framework for creating rule-based system. It's not only rule-based system, there is certain machine learning, but it's the first step of, or first kind of assistants which are built very easily, and any one of you can try it, and that's the basis of the M-agent on Facebook, where they use the slightly different approach than Microsoft, but it's very similar. And then there is the statistical approach, which is required to actually answer more complex questions. So the very basic system, which is similar to what has been described, is something which works on the entity extraction, intent detection, normalization, and execution paradigm, where the intent detector is probably the most interesting part of it, and it is based on sentence pair scoring, which is an algorithm used in many different fields of AI today. And here is some better system which would allow us to answer factoid question, and it's already based on statistical approach, and actually the graph or the flow chart which I am showing here is a flow chart from the system we have built at our faculty, and it's called Yoda QA, and the main leader Petr Baudiš is sitting here in the first row, and this system is in open source. You can go to GitHub and look it up for yourself. We have running demos on the 0 minutes. Okay, so another 2 minutes. So we have a live demo on the web. We also have an Android application which you can download. We have several applications of the first type, which can be sort of front end to this more complicated system or more advanced system. Certainly, all is using speech reco. And the next thing is here are some sample of the questions you can use. Those which are in bold work, those which are not in bold. This is a future work, and here are some steps you need to take to generate system like this. The only thing I probably would mention is the evaluation, which is really very tricky, because whatever deals, be it speech recognition or image processing, whatever deals with people is very tricky. We don't know what is right and what is not right. And once we get to the smaller percentage points, everything is very tricky. What's the future? The future is fantastic. We have a lot of work to do. It has been mentioned with the previous speaker mentioned lots of different areas, ideas, directions, and the assistants, of course, need to work in this direction too. So here are some lines, and probably the most important thing which I'd like to conclude the presentation with is that recently many articles on the web appeared that intelligent assistants might be used as a unified user interface for the future cell phone UIs, because you know that iPhone has been introduced in 2007, and since then all the cell phones are the same. There is no big change, and typically the user interface, when we look to the history, has been changing every 10 years. So, okay, I'm finishing. So this is it. This is the prediction from Gartner. All right. No questions.
Okay, I'd like to ask one question. What do you think will be the next step in artificial intelligence?
Next step in artificial intelligence?
Yes.
That's a very tricky question, because as has been mentioned recently, there was like 30% improvement in these cognitive sciences, which is image and speech record. But what we still don't have is any adaptability of these things or any combinational abilities which you build up. We have some better or more accurate input to system which can, based on this, do reasoning and based on reasoning solving more complex problems. If we, for example, try to answer a question like what is the West Coast University with the cheapest tuition teaching databases on the West Coast, forget it. None of the system would be able to do it because there is a lot of work behind it. Even if we translate or if we convert the speech to text precisely, there is still a lot of work to answer questions of this type or do any reasoning or to understand what's going on in the society, to model how people think. And I am not mentioning the creative ability of people like art, writing novels or creating news, or there are so many things. You know, we are really at the beginning.
Thank you.